I would leave the intro until last because it's the hardest thing to do.
Would you? That's interesting. You know, that's quite interesting because I don't think that's a good idea in like software development.
I think you should start with your hard thing.
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know about that, but leaving the hard thing till the end would be problematic because your estimations of how long the project will take, I mean, I could be wildly off if you don't know how long this hard thing will take. Mm-hmm. It could be that the hard thing is impossible in your like language or framework. And then it's just so much work down the drain.
Maybe it's not so much hard thing, I mean. It's just like the most boring part of the project is what I leave till last.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the whole agile way of thinking, Ryan, we should do an intro, come back to it next episode and see how we're going.
Adam, I'm thinking this is the intro.
Yes, I'm thinking we're gonna say hello. This is the CyberSoc Podcast, the first episode. I am Adam.
I am Ryan.
You are Ryan. How's your week been then?
This is the first episode, Adam.
Yep.
How are you feeling? I know you just asked me a question, but
that's okay, Ryan.
That's what it's like online. You speak over each other. That's just how it is.
That's how it is. We aren't in person, much to my disappointment. But yeah, I'm doing fine. had an interesting lunch. Had some deconstructed burgers.
Yes, I did see a picture of it. I don't know how I felt looking at your lunch.
I think you're against most of my meal choices, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I think every time you send a picture of your food.
And I'm very keen at sending pictures of my food.
You like to make faces out of your food as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, I suppose it's the primal instinct in me. You know, I can't go out and kill a boar, but I can pretend what I'm eating did have a face.
Oh, okay.
Even if it is just an egg.
Yeah. Okay. Adam.
Yeah.
I have loads of stuff I want to talk to you about.
Good.
Usually, I would speak to you about these things in the week. Because I see you all week, I speak to you all week.
Yeah.
But I've been holding off especially for this. For you.
I have been looking forward to it. I've known that I've been missing out on these questions, and I cannot wait.
You have missed out this week, actually. But you're going to have your fill now.
Yeah. Go on.
So, an issue I've had this week, right,
is
about the MVP, minimum viable product.
Yes, okay. A topic I'm quite passionate about.
Yes, I don't know if I've actually already hit my MVP.
Okay.
You know? I don't know if I've hit it.
That's interesting. Okay, so what do you think your MVP is then?
So, maybe as a bit of background, we're working on some projects for
that's probably
one of our assignments.
Yeah.
Mine is a social media scheduler app. And I think I've completed what would be like the MVP portion of it. I think anything I'm going to do now is going to be extra.
Okay.
A problem I've had this week is I started to work on like the Facebook and Instagram integration for the app.
Yep.
Because I have the Twitter integration already completed. I did that quite early. And you said something to me this week, or maybe it was last week, which I've like thought about a lot since. And you said, because I was saying to you, maybe I can only have the Twitter integration there.
Yeah.
And you said, you can't just have that one, you've got to have the others as well.
Yes.
And then I was thinking, for MVP purposes though, maybe I don't need the other ones. Maybe I could just have the Twitter integration.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
because surely having more than one social network for that isn't MVP, is it?
Well, I think a lot of the discussion that I hear people have about MVP, just in the class, particularly, is focusing on the word minimum, right? But I think the question you're discussing actually is focusing on the word viable.
Is it?
So is your app viable if it only does Twitter? Or do you think a majority, or at least a majority of the users you want to attract, will also want Instagram and or Facebook?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Because I've been thinking about this all week. If it should even have, beyond the MVP, if it should have Facebook and Instagram. Because what I'm doing is quite like an automated kind of social media thing. I feel like that fits in nicer with like the Twitter ecosystem compared to like Facebook and Instagram, where it's not generally as automated, right?
Right, okay. I mean,
I don't know how familiar you are with these.
I'm not. I'm very unfamiliar with
out of the loop.
Effectively all types of social media.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, I mean, I don't think that's correct, though, right?
What isn't correct?
Oh, actually, so do things like Facebook and Instagram have, because they're owned by the same company, aren't they? So they might have like similar tools in place. Do they have like marketing tools available in their own ecosystem that does something similar then?
They have manual schedulers.
Right, okay.
Whereas what I'm doing is like automated scheduling rather than manual. And I feel like that fits in better with the Twitter ecosystem, with like the bots and stuff that already exist on Twitter and are like accepted as a part of the community, you know, compared to on Facebook or Instagram, where like a bot is more bad than good.
I suppose so, but it kind of, so when you're served ads on these platforms,
mm-hmm.
I'm asserting this here, you might tell me I'm wrong, but they take the form of like a post, so you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an ad and actually just a normal post by a brand, right?
Well, other than it's saying like sponsored on it or something along those lines.
But the ads they serve aren't usually timed, right? It's just, here's a bunch of ads that I'd like you to serve to a bunch of users. Do it whenever you feel like.
Yes, I think.
So that's kind of, I don't know what point I'm building to here, but I think that shows that there is a want and need for it then on Facebook and Instagram, if these things exist.
Not quite understanding that argument, Adam.
Yeah. So I think I've gone too in depth in what your like product is, but I think MVP, to get back to my opinions on an MVP, which are quite substantial. I think MVPs aren't be all and end all. I think they're very movable, and
you have to be agile with it, right? You got to potentially move your MVP around.
Yeah, and in fact, I think defining a single MVP to target can be misleading because there is lots of different requirements along the way. So maybe 2 weeks in, you want to be able to do a demonstration to a client. So your MVP for the 2-week sprint or whatever you're doing is certain things need to be done to make this viable for the display to the client. You don't need to do any more work than that because that's, a waste of time. That's all you need to do to show the client. But then a month from then or something, maybe you're releasing, right? And then your MVP is probably quite different.
Yeah.
So I think having your MVP is, okay, we're only doing Twitter right now, is fine if your requirements are, I don't care for any of the users that don't want Twitter.
Because I was thinking to be, agile about it, I could release it just with the Twitter integration and then see if they want anything else, you're
thinking...
I'd originally planned for Facebook and Instagram from the start,
Yeah.
But maybe they wouldn't even want that. Maybe they'd want LinkedIn or, they wouldn't want whatever I'd originally planned. So I would be wasting my time by doing work that potentially no one would want. And beyond that, people might not even want the product as a whole. And it would be wasteful to just keep adding social networks to it,
Yeah, that's like a really excellent point there, Ryan. That is so true. Yeah, you should try and be really incremental and iterative in your releases. release early and fast.
Because it's harder. Well, no, it's easier when you have like a client with your weekly sprint meetings to get like instant feedback on the product you're building. This is a different situation because we're working on our own and we're just releasing it to the public. The public is essentially the client, but you can't just show them, the progress week by week as you build your MVP. It's a kind of different situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what you've said there, Ryan, has made me reverse my opinion on MVP.
Has it?
I think you're right. I think actually what you I think MVPs can still be very movable, and there's not just one MVP that your product has, and you should not do any more work than that, or I think your MVP should be for release here. So I think we're talking like, what is your MVP for your release candidate? And that is the minimum product that works, that is demonstrably working to a user. And Twitter working is that, right?
Exactly. That's what I've been thinking, because
I think you're 100% right there.
Just with our one social network, it fulfills the purpose of the MVP to show that it works, right?
Yeah.
And anything else
like
would be extra.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right on that one there, Ryan. No, I really, that makes me happy that I agree with that.
Okay. I wasn't expecting you to agree with it.
No, I wasn't either. But actually, that's just like very much a me argument to make that you've made to me there. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't make it myself.
It is hard to like specify your MVP from the start, I think.
Yeah, I think that's why it's got to be like constantly evolving. There's no, this is like my MVP. Google doesn't have like an MVP that it made 20 years ago and hasn't improved on since.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
I think
as you learn each week, as you work on your product, your MVP is going to potentially change a little bit, as you learn more about how it works, and potentially it's going to make more sense in your brain as well, because you might not have the best idea from the start how it will all fit together.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. But I think I think in your like retrospect, even if you're like working as a single person, you don't need to have formal retrospectives or like stand-ups or things like that. But if you like understand what you're doing, where your product should be going, you should be like constantly evaluating, okay, am I doing things that are needed to get me forward, or am I doing this because it's like extra fun, or is there things that I'm not doing that I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Have that kind of, I mean, I think in a team you'd like verbally have that discussion, and I think because we're working individually on these projects, it's harder to kind of keep track of that.
I think on your own, you kind of just have to always be reflecting, always reevaluating your choices as you're going along. It's just a process that happens all the time, compared to if you're working in a team, you're not going to be doing that constantly,
Yeah.
Whereas on your own, it's different.
I think working as a team, you should be doing that constantly.
Yes, but it's not, every second of every day.
No, but I think there's scopes of it, right? I mean, even when you're working as a team, there's a lot of like evaluation that you do personally. Mm-hmm. Right? If you've written something, some method to do something, you want to like, okay, well, is this good enough? Is this like working?
Yeah, and you'll reevaluate things in your brain as you go along, working on your own as well. I guess I'm kind of applying that to working on your own, and it does apply to being in a team as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what Agile is just making sure that you're like communicating what's going on,
always
and so
reflecting.
You can make these changes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really just a framework to do that in. I think people should have been doing that already. It's just they weren't, and that now there's like, well, okay, look, here's the framework that you should be doing it in.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it should be too fixed. So that's another point there.
How is your MVP, Adam?
I've been having a bit of difficulty over the past 2 weeks on getting my product
Yes.
to work.
I have witnessed this.
Just broad strokes, my product is kind of a dashboard to manage carbon-intensive assets. Not particularly interesting, but what I was planning to do, and what Ryan sent me off on this path was serverless as an architecture.
I sent you off on this path, did I?
I think so. I think yes. I think I didn't quite understand how cheap it was before you were discussing it with me.
Well, that's interesting now that I've reverted back away from serverless, but
Yes. I have bitten the serverless bullet quite hard. So that's how I was planning to deploy my app. And the app was going to be built, the stack is Vue on the front end, and then Nuxt on the back end, which is, if you've heard of Next for React, it's essentially just a JavaScript framework that's built around server-side rendering for Vue. That was my plan. It's been my plan trying to get this to work. But the support for this, so I'm using a framework called the Serverless framework to get this all. It links in nicely to AWS and things. Setting it all up, it's quite fun. But getting Nuxt to work on this has been unreasonably difficult, and I've not been able to do it. I've been trying for actually probably more than 2 weeks at this point, probably closer to 3 or 4.
I have already asked this, but were you? I can't remember the answer. Were you using Nuxt 3 or Nuxt 2?
I did both. I used Nuxt 2
both.
Initially, and then on to Nuxt 3, and it would upload, and the front view side of it would be fine, but it would not get any JavaScript or assets sent up to AWS, and it was driving me insane. I don't think it's an issue with Nuxt or something. It's just an issue with me not understanding how on earth that works, and there being no resources online of anyone else that has done it in the last 2 years.
This is the problem when you use newer frameworks and stuff, I feel, right?
I think it's the problem in using. I think using Nuxt is fine as it is, and using serverless is fine, but the communities that are using both are too small for there to be meaningful guides and examples on the internet.
There's not much overlap between the two.
Yeah, and it's
especially I think when you're on Nuxt 3, because that's been released in the last month or something.
Yes.
So you're going to find even less overlap there, if any.
Yeah, and it was on Thursday last week, Ryan pointed this out to me, and I was just trying the same thing again and again. It just wasn't working, and I wasn't just stopping, taking a look back and thinking to myself, wait a second here, this is stupid. I'm going to spend years of my life just trying to get this to work, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be Nuxt on the back end. So now I've just moved to having Express, which there are many guides for how to have serverless Express, and this is working.
Yeah, as you said, you were failing slow, not failing fast.
Yeah,
which isn't like you.
No, I think it's easy. It's easy to not practice what you preach.
Yes, I feel like that. Yeah, that is not what. Whenever I've seen you working on things before, worked with you, that's not how you've been. So is it just because you've been so massively sold by serverless? I
think it's I've been me. So I've still not moved away from serverless. It's still 100% serverless. I was just convinced that Nuxt would be quite nice, and also I think because I'm working by myself, I'm not having those formal chats with other people going, okay, analysing what I'm doing, and okay, is this me messing up here? Should I do something else? See, because when I brought this to Ryan, he was quite quick to understand, Adam, you shouldn't be doing this. This is stupid.
Working on your own, it's hard because you're just stuck with your own opinions. You've got no one else to really bounce your opinions against, to see if there's anything different that you could be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's something our lecturer mentioned as well, is that holding someone accountable for the work they do is good to get them like off their backside and getting work done. But I think it's also probably good to have like a work buddy, if you will, if you're working individually, just to, okay, what are you doing here? Is this sensible?
Yeah, I think that's something that's, useful in life in general.
Yes.
It's a good example. When people exercise, they sometimes exercise together because it's more motivation than exercising on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly the same. And you can apply a lot of, real life things to software engineering.
Yeah.
Because it's all the same ideas. You're just working with people.
All problems, when abstracted away far enough, are just people problems. And if you know how to solve those, you're golden.
Exactly. I find it interesting that you still want to use serverless, because I understand you're using it because you like it and it's fun and exciting, and you want to explore it.
Yeah.
But it 100% does not need to be serverless, especially for your MVP,
So I think for my MVP, there's no it needs to be deployed on whatever kind of architecture. There's no...
So
the MVP doesn't care about that. It's abstract, I think.
So you're working on something that isn't part of your MVP, really?
Well, it would need to be... the MVP is that it would need to be deployed and accessible. I can't just run it on localhost.
I just like throwing these arguments at you, Adam, to see what you come back with.
No, I enjoy it. The other option is just hosting it on an EC2 instance, just at standard like any other web app. And I can see that takes less work because that's how everyone assumes that you would be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the long-term benefits of serverless outweigh that, because I think part of the goal of what I'm doing is to build it to a state that it could continue on. So it could continue to be worked on, it could continue to exist. And building it serverless helps a lot with those, particularly DevOps problems of sling these services. So I don't really understand how Elastic... I don't know what it's called in AWS. It's Elastic something.
Elastic Beanstalk?
It could be that. But when you scale your EC2s up and scale them down again based on demand.
I think that is Elastic Beanstalk. But you've also got load balancers and...
Exactly. There's a lot of things I don't understand.
The AWS ecosystem is just massive. There's a lot going on there. It's incredibly hard to understand sometimes.
Yeah, I feel that's just too much of a hassle. It's a hassle hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that serverless, while initially my understanding... So I've worked for a company that actually was working on Laravel, and they were serverless, which is actually... So I'm Ryan, who's a lover of Laravel.
Absolutely.
So the Laravel serverless, what's it called?
Laravel Vapor.
Laravel Vapor is very one-click, right?
Yes, it's so easy to get your app on serverless with it on AWS. It's really good.
And I appreciate, not sponsored, I appreciate how I when I developed any of the code, never considered that it was serverless. That was not anywhere in my mind. So I think the difficulty with this deployment is setting it up initially. And then once you've done that, everything's fine. You never need to think about it again. And that's what I dream about.
Is it?
With this.
You could argue that one of your non-functional requirements is that, it needs to be highly scalable because you're planning to sell it to thousands of different whatever to use it, So you could put forward an argument for it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you're right in that it doesn't need to be like this initially. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you're failing slow with it again, Adam.
That might be right. That might be right again. But I am quite keen to do it this way. Partly for my own education. Partly I think it's there's no great loss to doing it the way I'm doing it right now.
Mm-hmm. It's new, it's exciting, it's fun. I get it,
and it's really cheap. It's free effectively, and past 1 million requests, they cost essentially nothing. But below that, it's free.
I'm unsure how free it is, Adam. I don't know if I agree with that.
you think it's time cost, do you?
Yes, definitely that as well. There is the time cost. I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked into it massively, but I know that when you put your app to be serverless on AWS, it will. There's a lot of different AWS resources involved in that have a cost associated with them. It's not just with EC2, for example. You're only really paying for your EC2 instance and the bandwidth to and from that instance.
Yeah, so I am using certainly a lot of S3 resources, which is just Amazon's storage. Really.
I think S3 is not that expensive. I don't think that's problem.
It's the database stuff that is also going to be running on. It doesn't need to be running on Amazon infrastructure, but it will be. I'm going to be using DynamoDB. Mm-hmm. That does start costing quite early.
With the serverless framework, can you only use Amazon, or can you? What do they have? I haven't.
You can use any supplier. So in fact, I looked at some examples on GitHub of trying to get Nuxt to work, and one of the examples was using Tencent, the Chinese company, their cloud infrastructure on serverless.
Okay. So from your serverless YAML file that you have.
Yeah.
That specifies how to deploy your app to serverless. Can you easily switch that out then to switch cloud provider?
Yes, as far as I'm aware, it's fairly simple. But things if all you were doing was hosting it on serverless, then it would be quite simple to do. I think the difficulty comes in is when you're integrated with other parts of Amazon. So if you're using S3 to also store images and things, and you're getting that from your app, you'd need to rip that out and replace that with the Google equivalent. Or if you're using DynamoDB or Redis or Amazon's Redis version, anything AWS based, just in the code of your app, they would need to be manually removed.
See, this is what I really like about Laravel, because it has a facade for all these things. So you don't actually interact with you're not directly interacting with S3 in your Laravel app. You're interacting with the Laravel storage facade. Yeah,
I mean, the serverless framework is itself a facade. Mm-hmm. Doing it manually with AWS, I can't imagine doing that. That would be awful.
Impossible.
You'd be having to upload your compiled code to S3. You'd having to import them into Lambda. I mean, maybe the people that are listening to this know than I do about that, but good God, that sounds awful.
Yes. I don't see a problem with relying on the serverless framework for that,
No, exactly. I think it's...
You have to rely... When you make web apps these days, you have to rely on loads of different services. It's not...
Yeah.
When you used to make websites back in the olden days, you didn't really rely on as many, external third-party providers or third-party packages as much.
Yes.
Whereas now you rely on so much to make web apps these days. Even over the last few years, that has massively changed to you just rely on more and more things, more and more packages.
Yeah. So wait, I think that's two different arguments there. The ever-increasing size of your, node modules, as well as your, reliance on everything Amazon.
Yeah. Just the increasing complexity, of making web apps these days. It is more complex than it has ever been. It's never been this complex.
I think it's in some ways more complex, but in some ways simpler.
Yes. You rely on more things to all work.
Yeah.
But
if something goes wrong,
like things like maybe the deployment
fix.
process is easier, like because a lot of it can be handled for you. It's easier because you're not making packages from scratch, and people who maybe know more about it are making it who are better than you at certain things, are making packages that you can use. But also, you know, there's the flip side of that, where you are relying on all these people to do things right and to work.
Yeah. No, I can't remember the stat on how much of the web traffic goes through Amazon, but that it's worryingly powerful. how much control they have.
Yeah, this is something I've like thought about as well. Is like having an over reliance on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's the standard way to deploy your app. I know that there are other cloud providers you can use, but you're still basically just relying on one massive conglomerate.
Yeah. It's still going to be Microsoft or Google.
So yeah, that's an interesting thing like that I think about.
Do you have any kind of like thoughts on the solution to that?
I don't have any thoughts to it other than, you know, you could self-host and then you're not relying on Amazon. But the chances are you're going to have many more problems self-hosting than you would on Amazon.
Yeah, you probably need to hire a team of people to manage that, as well as like the expenditure and the initial outlay to buy all these equipment, the electricity fees, like having this physical real estate space to put it.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon manage all that, so you don't have to.
Yeah. And it's surprisingly affordable.
Not sponsored.
Yes.
But,
I mean, Amazon has taken my money a number of times when they really didn't deserve it.
It is hard sometimes. I think AWS is maybe one of the... It's there's so many like resources in AWS. You know, S3, SES, EC2, that you would use as part of your web app. And it can get very confusing when it comes to the bill of where your money has gone, what you're spending it on.
Yeah. No, it feels like a separate job.
Yes.
I mean, it feels like now we've moved on from having like an IT department to manage your like servers, but actually just having people to manage your AWS costs. It feels like an ease now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard, especially when you're at like say startup level, because you're not going to have that expertise. You've got to kind of work it out on your own.
Do you feel you've worked out some of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand like AWS at enough of a level to be able to deploy an app to it. And
yes, but the cost side of things, how much do you understand like the reduction of that?
Well, when you look at like the billing explorer in AWS, I don't even think it explores enough for you. I think it should explore more. Because I want like a breakdown of everywhere the money has gone, you know?
Yeah.
Even with your simpler services like EC2, where it's got like the monthly price for running that instance. I've already said this earlier on, but there's the bandwidth and there's other things associated with that aren't included in that price.
Yeah.
And that's the same for all resources, you know, on AWS. So it's hard to manage that. And I think it's always going to be more expensive than maybe you initially thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of kind of maybe not so much hidden costs, but that aren't really made immediately available to you when you create like new resources on AWS.
Yeah, it feels like I know I had a problem when I was playing about with DynamoDB a few months ago, and I was like provisioning read and writes, and it was just in development phase. I wasn't like publishing this, but that was the wrong thing to do. It turned out because like a month later, I got an email saying you just been billed $30 by AWS, and it turned out after a fair while of searching that this provisioning of resources is not good for the wallet. You should, because what I was doing is not really using them. I should have been doing it on demand. Mm-hmm. Which upset me.
There are a lot of settings in AWS like that where it's just like one little select box.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you're like, oh, that sounds good. I'll click that. And then it's actually quite expensive just to have clicked that one box. Some problems I've had with deploying my app.
Yeah.
I was planning to use either Laravel Forge or Laravel Vapor. I'm using Laravel. I like the ecosystem so much.
So the difference between Forge and Vapor. So we discussed Vapor as being the serverless aspect
Laravel
of it.
Forge is maybe, you could say, the server-full solution to deploying your app. It's the more traditional way of deploying an app. You deploy it to a server, and that is it. So I've been kind of deciding between the two for a while of what I wanted to do. I do like Laravel Vapor because I enjoy the serverless aspect of like practically infinite scalability.
Yeah.
And I like that it's handled it better than the serverless framework handles it, where it's a bit more manual and you have to tweak and really work with like the nuts and bolts of it a bit.
Yeah.
Compared to Laravel Vapor, which is like one-click solution. You're not doing it manually yourself. Laravel Vapor handles it for you, which I quite like.
Yes.
But obviously you need to use Laravel to enjoy those benefits. But
it also has the benefits of everything that serverless provides as well, the scalability and low cost.
I think it's quite expensive if you're starting out. I don't know if it's worth it unless you need that scalability. I think that's the problem I have with using Laravel Vapor.
Because it's got an upfront cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did start to use Laravel Forge then instead. So it's the more traditional architecture of having a server to host your websites on, or you can have multiple servers with one website each. I have issues with it because I prefer the idea of a server should be throwaway, right?
Yes. What is it? Cattle versus pets.
Cattle versus pets. Your servers should be cattle. You can throw them away. Doesn't matter. They're not pets that you look after and grow and, that's not what a server should be.
You shouldn't feel a loss if one of them, dies.
No. You should be able to throw a server away, or a server breaks for whatever reason. That's more of a physical problem, I guess. But then if that happens, then you chuck it away, get a new one instantly, no problem. Yeah. That's the ideal way to handle servers. Laravel Forge isn't quite right there with that, I feel. I am kind of like trying to work my way around it a bit more and explore. But for example, one of the things they have is a script that you associate with your website, so that when you push, then it runs the script and it can deploy your app then to your website, right?
To AWS's stuff, presumably.
Yes, so to an EC2 instance. So you still have to. Well, we'll get to that point in a minute. You still have the underlying AWS resources, but you don't have to manually manage them. You can use Laravel Forge, which it's just an abstraction on top of AWS, basically.
Yeah.
But the point I was making is they have you can associate a script. You can write like a script into a form on Laravel Forge, and then that script will run when you deploy your app, which is nice, But I kind of made my own solution to this problem I have now, which is I don't like the idea of if you want to edit your script, you need to go to the Laravel Forge website and manually edit the script and click save on the form. I don't like that. Yeah,
that is bad.
I made a package to store that under version control.
Okay.
And then the Laravel Forge has an API, so you store the file under version control. When you build your project, I just make a request to the Laravel Forge API to update the script, and then the script will run when the app deploys. So it's quite good now. So I am warming up to it a bit more.
Okay.
And it's becoming a bit more a bit less like the idea of the cattle and more like, well, no, it's becoming more cattle, less pets.
Yeah.
And I like that.
So you think Forge would feel comfortable just like switching away from AWS and onto Google Cloud or something, would it?
No, because what I've just been talking about with the deploy scripts for Laravel Forge, that's per like website. You still have a server, so there's the idea of like server
when you say
plus
per
website.
What do you mean?
So you create a server in Laravel Forge, and then you can add multiple websites to that server.
Okay.
So they'll all be running on one server, all isolated from each other within the server.
Right. Okay. So, but when you say multiple websites to the server, what is an example of this? Sorry.
Well, you don't have to. You could just run one website on the server.
Yes. I just can't see why you'd need multiple. What is the use case for this?
You could have why you need multiple websites. You mean?
Yes.
For separate apps, not the same app.
Right. Okay.
So,
it just feels weird to deploy that all on the same server.
It's an option though, right? And I think it's cheaper to do it like that.
Yes. Okay.
You could have one master server that runs all of your web apps.
Yes. It feels something I wouldn't enjoy.
No, and all options are available to you. You don't have to do it that way.
Yes.
But you can have one server that runs like a few of your websites on it. It's very good for like if you're small. Right, you're a startup and you're just trying out a few products, you want to push them all to one server. You can otherwise have multiple servers for each of your apps if you want to,
Yeah.
You can do it whatever way you want to do it.
Yeah, okay.
I've got just the one server there right now, and I'm with the idea of maybe having multiple sites in it, but I only have the one website on it right now.
Yes.
But
yeah, I wouldn't go for that. I wouldn't have multiple websites on the same server. I know I've said this, but I'm just saying if you're thinking that, I wouldn't do that.
Well, I don't know. It's still early days for me, Adam, with Laravel Forge. But the idea you were saying about like, is the server throwaway?
Yeah.
No, because the server is like a little pet now that I've made. It has lots of my unique settings applied to it.
But these unique settings, you're saying you're just storing them in a config file. Could you not apply them again?
Those are for the deploy script, right?
Oh, okay.
For the website. The server it's hosted on has a lot of things that I've tweaked.
Like what?
Well, things like the Nginx settings and like the queue worker settings. Things I've like tweaked for the server. So
that feels like something you could...
I think something that you should maybe do for that is you should write that down.
Yes, but I write that down. But you could do some kind of infrastructure as code. That could be a bash script that you can run and it applies these settings, right?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what the Laravel Forge API allows in that respect. But you could interact directly with the AWS resources underneath, but maybe that would overcomplicate things for this purpose.
Yes, so this Forge stuff sounds more like a hamper than a help if you want to do something slightly more complex than LLS.
I think it's a bit of both. It helps because while using Laravel Forge, I haven't had to use AWS at all because it's abstracted away. I'm just using an interface on top of AWS to deploy my apps.
Yes.
But it still has this idea of the server is your pet, and if I lost that server and made a new one, I'd have to go through all the settings again to like apply everything manually. Maybe a good thing to do is to document that and write down the changes you make I think a bare minimum thing to do.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. I think it's bare minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done it.
Right, okay.
Because, you know how
because
it is.
Because it's a pet.
It's...
Yeah. See, that I wouldn't... That's why... Another reason why I wouldn't have multiple sites on one server is that if something happened with that, everything's gone down. And also, if you want to expand one of your servers, maybe one of these websites is very popular, you'd be elastically expanding all of your websites at once, and that's absurd.
I think you could say that, yes, you could do that, or once one starts to become more popular, then you can pull it out of the server and host it as its own server instead, you know?
Yes. I mean,
So
have
then
you
you can start
considered
having multiple.
Docker or any
Yes.
kind of containerization?
Yes, and that's what I use locally to develop.
Okay. So why don't you deploy
Use
like
what, EKS or ECS? I can't. ECS is the AWS Docker, right?
that? Right, okay.
I think. Yeah, I mean, I could also use that, but I do not like to spend time on like.
Because that's closer to a cow than it is a
Yes.
pet.
I don't like spending time on managing servers and deploying it. For me, as you know, a software engineer, full stack developer, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to be spending time on server stuff. I just want to be making the app, making the
Isn't
web
that
app.
full stack, Ryan? Full stack, front end, back end, database deployment. Do everything.
No.
One man band?
No. Surely full stack is just your front end, your back end. That's what you're working on. You're not also working on sysadmin type stuff.
But you are, because you're a one man band.
I am, and this is actually what I've been doing. I did have to log into the Linux server at one point to install some package.
Yeah. See,
So-
I mean, that's what you should not be.
I am being a
If you are
sysadmin
developing
as well.
in Docker, I mean, Docker's would be very good at getting. I don't know how that works with Forge. I imagine poorly.
I imagine not, though. I imagine if I was going to do Docker, then
Yes.
I'd just go straight
there's
to
not
AWS.
Yeah, I mean, also Docker feels like a mid part between that and serverless, and I'd just say go serverless. In like the effort to benefit side of things.
I mean, yes. I like Laravel Vapor for serverless.
Yeah,
That is
I
very
really
good.
enjoy serverless.
It's kind
just
of
generally.
like Laravel Forge, but it extracts away all the problems I've just talked about of your cats, your cattle versus cats.
Yeah,
You don't have that problem with Vapor because you have no servers to manage.
yeah,
So that problem's just abstracted away instantly.
yes, yeah. No, serverless is excellent, and I can't see myself going back to a non-serverless world.
Well, it is exciting. I don't know if it's the future.
No,
I think things will stay server full. I don't know if that's the correct word to be using there. Just
no,
on
but
servers.
we understand what you mean. Yeah,
I think things will stay server full for a long time.
I think that's just because of legacy software. Do you think new developments will be? So maybe it's like a lack of tutorials and things that I was saying earlier. Maybe that will stop people from. See, I'm changing the frameworks and things that I'm using to make sure I am serverless. But maybe other people would see that and go, well, I'm just going to not be serverless and keep the frameworks the same.
It kind of circles back to what I was saying earlier, right? About you kind of really relying on these cloud providers.
Yeah.
The chances are, you're relying on them anyway if you have servers, but not necessarily. You could host your own servers, and
Yeah,
some
I
people
think
would.
doing something serverless so I was looking at it into if I have like this serverless application I've developed and I need to run it on a server for like security reasons, our company wants to have complete ownership of this. It is doable, but it's a faff, and it also kind of defeats the point. So by being serverless, I kind of integrate myself into at least one provider.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something to think about, I think, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've got any more thoughts to share on serverless. It's exciting. I like it. I like the scalability of it.
Yeah, I think it does require some fanaticism.
Yes,
Possibly.
it is. I think it is. It is hard at the moment.
Yeah,
You know,
but I've got nothing to lose.
you've got nothing to lose with this. Exactly. So you may as well explore. I'm all for, exploring and trying out new things.
Yeah, I might have to fail fast if if it is becoming more of an issue, because there are deadlines that I've got to hit.
Yes. So you have something you're like working towards here.
Yeah.
It isn't like you can just keep failing at it forever. I thought you have it up and running though now, don't you? You don't have like more serverless problems. Yeah.
No, it's fine now. But we'll see how it goes. Well then, do we think that's it?
I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I'm good. I think that's a wrap.